Okay, so moving further, we have got a very tiny box in here, and one thing that is bothering me quite a lot is some of the CSS. I know we haven't focused much on the CSS, but I know uh, nobody can bear with this CSS. So I'll just call it as NAMI for name, call it anything, and save that. Let's go into the app.css. Just at the bottom, what we have written a massive CSS. We're gonna just write NAMI, and we won't be doing much in here. We'll be saying simply font size is going to be, let's just say 30 pixel is good, and we'll be doing some padding as well. Let's just say 20 pixels, and I think things should look good. Okay, looks good. And when I say John, it doesn't do anything. So what is our goal in here is to print our name in the console log. So as soon as I hit John, we should get a John. And to be honest, that's not a big deal, and you should be able to do it by now. All we have to do is define a method on submit, and that should do the job. So let's go into the form and create on submit, and that submit will be simply equals this dot name submit. And I know some of you don't like the habit of creating the variables or the name of the functions or even use the function before defining it. I'm really sorry for that. But what we are doing in here, we are just calling this method. So let's copy this. Let's do our first syntax. Whenever we need to define anything, first we go into the constructor and we use this dot. In fact, I can copy this entire thing to bind it. And we'll be doing this dot name submit equals to this dot name submit dot bind and have an access to this. So this is why we are doing it. Good. And now it's complaining because we haven't got the name submit in the definition in here. Okay, that is why it's complaining. And make sure you have a deep look onto the error that when this property cannot read the property bind of undefined. So you read the error properly because you'll be having these kinds of error quite a lot. Okay, now it's a good idea to define it. I would like to define my function at the very top, just above the constructor. And what I'll be doing is I'll be saying this guy, oops, not this dot name submit, and there we go. Now it should not be complaining because it has a function. Obviously our function doesn't do anything, but it's there. It's a function, no big deal. Okay, now what we'll be doing is we'll be accessing this guy student name, and we'll be setting this state, and we'll be printing all the state in the log. So that is really simple. So we are going to simply say var student name is going to be equal to, and obviously in the name submit we are getting an event, and this event is holding the value of this guy. So whatever we are passing as ref, this is being stored into an array or kind of an object known as the refs. So we'll be accessing that. So let's go into the name submit, and we are saying var student name is going to be equal to this dot refs, and inside that we have passed on a name and we want to access that value. Good, that's good. And we are going to have this dot set state, and we are going to set the state of student name. By the way, I can just leave it like that, student name, because it's very smart in the ES6 to decide that, hey, I want to set this student name with this student name. But I think a lot of students just find it very confusing. So I'll just say in here as student name. Okay. And it can also take a callback function. You can call the fat arrow function. I'll just call a basic old days function, which is also equally good. And this is simply going to be a callback function, which is going to print up everything onto the log. So console log this dot state, and we should be good to go. I know I did a little bit things quicker, but we are just doing basic stuff in here. We are just calling a name submit, and we are saying just store that in a student name. We are accessing it using the event, and we are setting the state, and we are printing it onto the log. So that should be good. So let's just say if our John is now accessible in the log. So as I hit enter, notice we are accessing the full object, and notice one more thing in here. Let me zoom in there, that our UID is also being set. So every time you just hit the John, there is going to be a new unique ID. And notice the student name is being set to John, is submitted is still false, and our answers is not having anything. So that is good so far. Very good progress and very step-by-step process. Let's go and finish up one more thing. Now we are also not setting anything into the question because when the student name is not set and the is submitted is also false, then simply in this guy, the question should also not be set in here as well. So what we'll be doing just after this div, I'll close that with a semicolon, that is important, and we'll be saying questions is gonna be simply equal to null. So that is how at the very state we are just printing this input box and nothing below there. Okay, so what would be the next state or next if and else condition? Now obviously the next condition we are gonna write, let me first write an else if, and what should be the if condition according to you in this case? Now we will be working with a very simple scenario. Now let's just say we are simply saying this dot state, oops, I missed something. Yep, I write this two times. This dot state dot student name is now not equals to blank. So this is how we are saying it. Now there can be dozens and hundreds of other ways of determining this state. All I'm saying is now student name is something. I don't know what it is, but it is not equal to blank there. Okay, and we are also saying that the questions are not yet submitted. So we are going to say this dot state, oops, not a comma, this can be a typical typo there. So this dot state dot is submitted is still equals to false. Then we want to display all the questions and answer, and we want to say at the top, hey there John, or something like that. Okay, so let's just say I'll come back onto this constructor in a second to display the things, and all I want to say is simply let's set our variable first of all, student name and the question. So the student name is gonna say h1, let's use an h1 there, I think h1 is good, and we'll be saying hey there, and we'll be just printing or we can say welcome to uSurvey or something like that. We'll say welcome to uSurvey, welcome to uSurvey, and then we'll be printing the name. Now in order to get the name, it's really simple. We have to say this dot state dot student name. Okay, that is good. So we have set this up, and just for a moment, just for only this moment, I'm gonna just set the questions to something. So I'll just say questions is gonna be simply a paragraph there. For a moment, I know that's not make sense, but for a moment we're gonna just say hey there. Okay, and make sure I close that guy as well. So this is good, and I think okay, it's expecting a colon and double equal there, so let's make it happy, and there we go. So as soon as I say John there and hit enter, notice we are saying John there as well as hey there. So we are able to access the things in here. So we are proceeding in a good way. Now in order to work on this if and else statement, we'll set something momentarily for the student name, because otherwise always we have to just type in John there, hit enter, and then only we are able to see the second else or second condition there. So I'll just write a name here, just arbitrary name of the killer man there. So if the student name is set to killer man, all the time we are saying killer man there, and we can work onto this component. Okay, sounds good, pretty good. Now in the next video, we'll figure out what we can put in the questions. Basically there are going to be a lot of input and labels there, and we'll be just displaying our form that we want to display here. So let's go into the next video and set up everything into the questions.